my quilty friends, in today's video I'm going to show you how to make the Churn Dash Quilt Block. Now it's part of my Mystery Block of the Month series and we're up to block number 10, and if you'd like to find out more information and perhaps catch up on the blocks, I'll put a link down below with everything you need to know. But for now, let's make the Churn Dash Quilt Block. You can find a copy of these cutting instructions over on my website. I'll put a link in the description below. So on the wrong side of the A fabrics that measure 5 inches by 5 inches, we're going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner. So I'll just take my ruler, line it up at the top and at the bottom, and then when I'm happy I'll just draw a line, and I'm just using a washable marker here. Then I'm going to take my B piece that measures 5 inches by 5 inches and place them right sides together. Line up all the edges, and when I'm happy I will just pop a couple of pins in just to keep it in place. And I'm going to put them like this because we're going to sew down either side of the line. So with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, we're going to sew on both sides of the drawn line. I'm going to start on the very edge of my fabric. I'm stitching at stitch length 2 and I'm using wonderful confetti thread, and my sewing machine is a Juki TL-2010. So just starting on the very edge, and I'm just following that line. I'm going to come off the very edge, cut my thread, turn around and come back down the other side. Now let's remove our pins, and it's optional, but you might like to press it just so it's laying flat. Now we're just going to cut along our diagonal line, making 2 half square triangles. So just taking my ruler, lining it up on the line, and when I'm happy, cutting. And then please repeat this for the other 2 A and B pieces. So for all our half square triangles, we're going to set our stitches, which makes our stitches stronger and helps our blocks lay flatter. Then I'm going to open it up and press our seams towards our B fabric. I'm going to give it a finger press here, make sure there's no creases, and then press. And I'll repeat this for all 4 half square triangles. For all 4 half square triangles, we need to square them up so they measure 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches squared, and I have a ruler that is exactly that size. So all I do is place it on top, take the line that's running right through the middle of my ruler and line that up on the seam, and then I just carefully trim all 4 sides. Now if you don't have a 4.5 inch squared ruler, all you do is place a diagonal line on your seam and then measure 4.5 inches on all 4 sides. So I'll just trim these all now to the right side. I am using a rotating mat, and if you don't have one, don't worry, just move your mat as you go. Or sorry, turn your mat as you go. Now I'll square up the remaining half square triangles. So now we're going to sew our A and our D pieces that measure 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches together. So I'm just going to take one of each fabric, place them right sides together, line up all the edges so that they're sitting nicely, and then when I'm happy I will just pop in a couple of pins. And I'll repeat that, so I've got my 4 sets. So now I'm just going to start on that very edge again and sew along with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, removing my pins as they get in the way. I'm going to come right off the edge, and then I'm going to take my next piece and sew, and this is called chain piecing. It just saves a little bit of time. If you're enjoying this video, please do subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss out on another video. It really helps me out and I appreciate it so much. Then I'm going to come off the end of the last piece, cut the thread, and then I'm just going to take my scissors and carefully snip the thread that's holding the 4 pieces together, and then let's press. So setting our stitches again, and then we're going to press towards our D fabric, opening it up, finger pressing, and then pressing. And a lot of people always ask me what this little iron is, and I absolutely love it. It's an Aliso M3 Pro project iron, and I'll put a link down in the description below if you'd like to check them out further. So now we're going to take all our pieces and place them so that they're matching our image above. So I'll just start with my centerpiece and then place them all out so that they match our image. And do take care, it's just so easy to accidentally get one around the wrong way and not even notice it. Okay, so there we have it. Now do double check. Like I said, it's just so easy to accidentally have one around the wrong way and not notice until it's all sewn together. So once you're happy, we'll sew each of the rows together, and then we'll sew those rows together. So I'll just move these down, and what we're going to do is sew these 2 pieces together. So I'm just going to take them, place them right sides together, line up these edges, and when I'm happy, I will just pop a couple of pins in. Then I'm going to sew along that edge, open it back up, and then I'll sew this 3rd piece on, and while I've finished that row, I'll do the same for the 2nd row and then the 3rd row. So just like we have been, starting on the very edge, sewing along with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, removing pins as we need to. And then when I come up to seams, I'm just making sure that they're being sewn down in the direction that they were pressed so that our block sits really nice and flat. Cutting my thread, taking my 3rd piece, making sure it is in the right position, and pinning and sewing. Finishing this row, and now I'll carry on and do the same for the remaining 2 rows. So just placing our rows so that they match our image again. Now what we're going to do is we're going to press our seams so that when we're sewing our rows together, we can nest our seams perfectly. So for the top row, we're going to press our seams in, the middle row, the seams out, and the bottom row, the seams in. So I'll start with this bottom row here, just setting my stitches, then pressing my seams in towards the center here. Then these ones are going to be pressed out towards the outer edge. And these ones will be pressed in. So one last time, just placing the rows so that they are in the correct position, matching our image. Then I'm going to take my top row, place it on top of my 2nd row, pick it up and find the seams so that I can nest them. So I've got one set of seams folded over and going this way, one set of seams folded over and going this way. What I'm going to do is push them up against each other so they can't go any further. Then what I like to do is open it up and make sure it's creating a nice straight line, and it is. I'm also making sure these edges are lined up nicely, and when I'm happy, I'll just pop a pin in to hold it in place. Then I'm going to find my 2nd set of seams and nest them, and when I'm happy, popping a pin in there. And then I do like to put a pin in right at the end, lining up the top edge and the side edges there, just keeping everything in place, and at the beginning. And if you'd like to, you can even pop a pin in at the middle of each of the main blocks there, just so we know all those edges are lined up nicely. It's completely optional, it's entirely up to you. Now what I'm going to do is just sew along that edge just like we have been. Then I'm going to open it up and attach the bottom row and sew that on just like I have these first 2 rows. Okay, let's give it a final press. So I'm going to press my seams open, and this is really just a personal preference. It is a little bit fiddly pressing them open. If you'd like to, you can just press them to one side. It's really just a personal preference. I'm just making sure that I do keep all the seams in the direction that I've originally pressed them. Hopefully I've sewn them down that way too. It just helps the block lay way flatter. Okie dokie. And then if we turn it over, there's our Churn Dash Quilt Block. Isn't that just so pretty? I will just give it a once over. And there we have it. We're all done. I love it. It's so pretty and cute. It's just really lovely and simple. So there we have the Churn Dash Quilt Block. Now it is similar to a block we did a few years ago. I just changed up the way we placed the fabrics and how we made it. Last time we cut strips at 18.5 inches, sewed them together and subcut them. This time we used the 4.5 inch pieces and sewed them together, because what I've found is people aren't particularly a fan of cutting those longer strips and sewing them together, particularly if you're a beginner. So I hope you like this way of making the Churn Dash Quilt Block. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking your time to stay till the very end. Happy quilting!